Welcome to what we call the truly authentic world of genuine real estate.
Welcome to The Real Real Estate. Today we are here with Nadia Lemaroy, who comes from a company called HIR Casa. Honestly, I'd like to give a very genuine introduction about Nadia, which is that I remember the first time you were giving a presentation to me, and I think later to one of my clients. I really liked your attention to detail. I really liked how you stayed on top of things, how you followed up with the client, and I felt like you were really on track. So that was what I loved most about you, even before the company. I mean, I really valued your professionalism. And then after discovering everything your company offers, honestly, I thought it was a great option for clients. So, well, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And before we dive right into the topic, for those who are listening to us for the first time, I'd like to start with something very basic, but also very important, right? So, what is HIR Casa and what kind of clients does it help exactly? Tell us a little about HIR Casa.
Of course. Well, I also think that client follow up is important. I mean, as a real estate advisor, I really understand the importance of, well, who I refer my client to, right? We take such good care of them. And well, Gilcasa is a 100% Mexican financial company that is regulated by the Ministry of Economy. We are not a bank, but we are regulated by the same ministry. We are listed on the Mexican Stock Exchange, and this allows us to have the capital to support more investors. The main difference is that between traditional banks and HIR Casa is that we can serve economies that traditional banks might not serve. And so we're talking about the main clients of the Riviera Maya, people who sometimes don't live here in Mexico, who are Mexicans living abroad, Canadians, Americans, and even people of other nationalities. What we do is take into account the economy of their country of origin or where they live to buy a property here in Mexico. And
Besides, something that really impresses me is the track record they have. I mean, they have an important history. How many years was it? 60? How many years?
that's right. The company, the GER Group, was founded 64 years ago. They're a family, the father and his two sons, and they started out building in Mexico City. And there came a time when they said, well, what's needed is someone who can lend to more Mexicans, right? Because if you think about it, how many Mexicans does the traditional banking system actually lend to? So that's where it comes from, out of the need to support the people. That's how Grupo HIR was born, and we've made progress. As of today, we've been listed on the stock exchange since 2018, and we are a
Company. That's an incredible fact.
yes.
I mean, that gives a lot of security, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's a growing company. We're opening more branches. We're in more parts of the country, so that also I really like how the company has grown as well.
That's really nice, honestly. It gives all the clients peace of mind. So, today we're going to talk about a topic that generates a lot of questions, especially among foreigners, Mexicans who live outside of Mexico, which is the topic of mortgage loans. Many people often want to invest, but they don't really know how credit works. So, when you don't live in the country, there are questions that really get to you, right? Yes.
Is
So I would start with something very basic, which is to say, well, to explain first of all that when you want to buy a property here in Mexico, normally the down payment required is 30%, right? Well, whether it's a private seller or a developer, that's usually what's required. But I'd like to get straight to the point with you and now really ask you, what is it that allows me to get pre-qualified for a loan before coming to Mexico, right? So let's start with who exactly is your loan for?
very well, it's for Mexicans, obviously, and for Mexicans living abroad. A Mexican can live wherever they want, right? We have Mexican clients who live in Europe or the United States, as well as Americans who live in other parts of the world, and Canadians. For these three nationalities, they can live wherever they want. And for the rest of the world, we do ask that they live in Mexico, right? If we're talking about Europeans or, I don't know, Colombians, Venezuelans, then yes, they must reside in the country. But Americans, Canadians, and Mexicans can live outside the country, and we qualify them for a property here in Mexico. So,
In reality, the only people who are actually going to require a residency permit are pretty much everyone else in the world, excluding Americans and Canadians. Isn't that right?
correct.
Okay, so if you are American or Canadian, you don't need residency in Mexico to apply for a loan with HIR Casa.
Of course, because we understand that they are the main investors, especially here in the Riviera Maya.
And indeed, many clients ask if it's necessary to be physically present in the country to start the process.
No, and that's actually something that works very well for the type of client who first starts qualifying with you by looking at properties, seeing what they like, getting to know the area, getting to know the different investment zones, and at the same time can qualify for a mortgage loan. Then, when they come here to the Riviera Maya, they already have the certainty that how much were they approved for and what is it that they like. So we can make that plan together. And another great thing is that once the client is approved, that approval is valid for 24 months. Even if the property isn't delivered within 24 months, speaking about pre-sales, we can extend it for a longer period.
That's excellent, of course. We'll touch on this point about pre-sales later on because it's something a lot of people are interested in. Well, as we said, a lot of people are on a credit score plan. We already know how that works. And many of my clients always ask me, they ask us as advisors, right? Whether you really need a minimum credit score to be able to apply,
Yes, that's a question I get all the time. Frequently,
right?
very frequently, but look, it's not so much about having a specific score, but rather your entire credit report, right? That you pay on time, and above all, that you have borrowing capacity, right? Because you could have a great score, but not have the capacity to take on debt. What does that mean? It means that the relationship between what you earn and what you spend leaves room for another debt, right? For a mortgage.
Of course. I clearly remember you told me the other day when we talked. Well, personally, I really like the fact that you literally evaluate and analyze every single one of the client's various sources of income. I mean, a traditional bank doesn't do that.
That's right.
I think that's really, really good. I mean, it really is a differentiating value, isn't it?
Of course, that's a question we get all the time. Hey, so why HIR Casa and not a traditional bank? Well, the primary and most significant distinction is that we carefully analyze and assess several different types of economies, and we thoroughly evaluate their performance. A set of economic characteristics of the client that traditional banks wouldn't usually consider. For example, your client who owns a property in Mexico and is doing very well. We take those earnings into account when evaluating her, and she's doing very well.
Yes, in fact, she was approved for more than she expected.
Exactly, for more than she needed, and we're covering the property as well as the deed registration costs.
That's great, isn't it? It's just that you don't even expect it to cover the deed registration costs. I mean, normally when you apply for a loan, you only expect it to cover your house, right? So when you get more, well, that's really nice, honestly. And another thing I feel is very important to mention is that your loan doesn't just apply to houses, apartments, or buildings, but it's actually quite broad, isn't it? I mean, it does cover several other things.
Yes, we cover what is purchase and sale. Well, the purchase of a property, an apartment, a house, a commercial space, medical offices, warehouses, industrial buildings, or land. And we can also help you with remodeling and construction of a property.
Well, that is actually quite different from a traditional bank, for example, right?
And
Do also remember the application times, or rather, the validity periods of the loan for Mexican clients and foreign clients. I know there is a small difference in the time frames.
correct? In the case of Mexican clients, it's 10 years. In the case of foreign clients, since we ask for a slightly higher down payment, what happens is that the term is a little shorter. So it's 9 years and 7 months. In both cases, it's the same monthly payment, same interest rate. The only difference is 5 months, right?
Okay. Yes, it's practically the same. And, well, one particular topic that seems to come up very often in our discussions is the complex and challenging issue of dealing with anxiety in daily life. What is my interest rate when I'm paying a mortgage? So, I mean, of course, people wonder about that because you see, in Europe, that's often very low, right? At least in Italy, in my country, it is quite low. So when people come here, they often get scared by that. But I love the way you combine that interest rate, you know? So I find it helpful that you can mention that part right now.
Well, the short answer is 9.9% interest.
There you go.
We know that in Mexico, the interest rate is set by the Bank of Mexico. So, what varies from one financial institution to another, what varies from one bank to another, is how this monthly payment is structured.
Exactly. And
I always, in the first call with the client, explain how it is divided. We talk about a monthly payment that includes life insurance, property insurance, administrative fees, taxes. Everything is included in this monthly payment that brings us to a 9.9% interest rate. And as you mentioned, we understand that in other countries, they talk about lower rates.
but I have a list of the buts.
Well, if we are going to start right at the very beginning, then the answer is simply no. Well, not exactly.
How can I explain it to you?
Something that's very important to mention is that this is a loan in Mexican pesos. So we also have an advantage there, right? Because if we look back 10 years ago, the dollar was lower, right?
Of course.
So as a benefit, let's say that over 10 years, the client will have gained something. And for example, if 1 month the dollar is doing really well, you can go and make a payment toward the principal, right? And also the other thing is that this loan doesn't show up on your credit in the country where you live.
No, that's great.
It helps you build a credit report, a credit history in Mexico.
In Mexico, of course, absolutely. And actually, we're going to talk about that a bit later as well. Topics like bank accounts, but we'll get to that later in the episode. Something that really struck me as now, something really out of the box for a financial company is the minimum financed amount. Because I can count on one hand the number of times that, for one reason or another, the minimum financed amount required by other financial institutions was so high that clients sometimes couldn't reach it. So I think it's really important that you mention that. What is the minimum amount you require?
Our minimum amount is 300,000 pesos. Honestly, you can't really buy anything with 300,000 pesos. So it's basically like saying we don't have a minimum amount as such. And the maximum amount is 25 million pesos.
And at any time, a client could cancel the credit with you by making an early payment. Are there any penalties for early cancellations? Or really are there not?
We do not actually have any specific provision that is referred to as a penalty for cancellation, just as you have mentioned, regarding the terms for early payment. However, there is a component of the monthly payment, which is the administrative fee, that must always be paid. So what I do is talk with the client, ask them, well, what is your investment plan? If your idea is to pay it off next month, then obviously it's not convenient, right?
Sure.
But we talk and see what is most convenient for them according to their plan, right? There are people who are thinking of having a more long-term property investment,
And
while others might see it as something to sell or even to resell in about 5 years' time.
right? Well, anyway, to sum up the numbers, because I think that's always helpful, right? Here you go. If you're Mexican, in summary, you're asked for a down payment of 36%. Sorry,
Mexican 33?
33. Okay? If you're a foreigner, 36%.
Correct.
You have a 9.9% interest rate, which is not variable, it's a fixed rate. There are no penalties for paying off your loan early. What you do pay are administrative fees, and those apply to everyone, right? I mean, literally anyone of any nationality can apply for this type of loan. And your term will be 10 years for Mexicans and 9 years, 7 months for foreigners. Am I correct so far?
Correct.
Very good. Yes.
What you mentioned, the down payment is what makes our loan so flexible because we know that someone who has already put down a 36% down payment is someone who is not going to stop paying. And that gives us a guarantee to be able to offer you a loan with the best conditions.
These days, we've been, let's say, warming up the topic on social media on Buy with Dali, and we've actually been leaving open questions about this topic to see if any doubts would come up and to see if anyone had any specific questions. And I'm going to read you a few questions that did come up on social media to see if you can help us. Some of them, in fact, you've already touched on partially. The first one is whether this loan affects the client's credit report in their country of residence.
No, definitely not. And that's a very good thing.
Okay, that's great because you know that there are people who hesitate. I mean, if their credit is affected, they won't move forward. It's happened to me more than once with clients that if it affects their credit,
Yes.
they don't like that.
Well, this report, as I was saying, is not reflected in the foreign credit report. It helps you build a credit history in Mexico, but it doesn't affect your report abroad.
Then we also have, actually, that is the sister of a client of mine who lives in Canada. And she reached out on social media to ask if she can pay from a Canadian bank account. The payment of her direct debit monthly installment.
We actually help more with opening an account in Mexico. We need to set up the monthly payment to be debited from a Mexican account.
And what do you do if she only has a passport? Are there banks that allow you to do that?
Yes, that is correct. There are actually a couple of specific financial institutions that are highly specialized in serving that exact type of international client. The kind of individual or business owner who will be frequently making regular electronic transfers back and forth between the United States and Mexico.
So, yes, it is absolutely true that there are certain banks that will let you open accounts in Mexico with just your passport. It is definitely possible to do so, and the payment method is via direct debit, which means the funds must be debited from a local Mexican bank account.
Correct.
Now, another question, another doubt that came up was about whether the loan applies to pre-sales. We touched on that at the beginning of the episode because you mentioned it. But anyway, here it goes. Is it possible to purchase a property in pre-sale using a mortgage loan?
Of course. Well, HIR Casa, and this is very important, HIR Casa will not pay, will not transfer, will not make, will not pay for a property that has not been completed, right? So the property must be physically and legally ready to be deeded. However, what we do is qualify you from now, and we freeze the loan conditions from this moment until your property is delivered. That's something we can do, and it's something that really gives clients a lot of peace of mind, right? Because no matter what happens in the world tomorrow, you already have your loan secured from today.
So, well, to give an example that ties into what we're saying, let's talk about the topic of pre-sale, right? Let's say you're a client. You bought during the pre-sale, put down a 30% down payment, and you're about to receive your property, right? But now you need to complete your payment with a loan. You realize that you need a loan. In this scenario, how does HIR Casa come into the process? And also, how quickly can this loan be structured when the delivery is already near?
Okay, you gave a 30% down payment to the developer or the seller, and your property is about to be deeded.
Exactly.
If the property is going to be deeded right now during the month of March, which is just about to start very soon,
Much. We're at the end of February 2026.
so we would sign the deed in March. I mean, this year at the end of March, around March 25th, without any problem, right? What are we going to ask of you? Well, that you complete whatever is missing to reach 33% or 36% of the down payment. That's all? Okay. The qualification process is very quick. To qualify either you or your client, what we do is upload the information to a platform or the client uploads it to a platform. Once the information is entered, we get a response from our team of analysts within 1 to 5 business days, and from there, we begin the entire process of titling the property.
Of course, and that's really great. Now, for example, let's say you haven't chosen the property yet, and as we mentioned, we did touch on this, that you want to know if you pre-qualify for a property even though you haven't picked one yet. Yes, you can qualify from now, and you said it's 24 months, right? To lock in your terms, right? Extendable up to 36.
Of course, right? What happens most often is you're a client who is in the United States or Canada, and you searched online, found Dali, you're looking at properties, getting to know the area, learning about the properties, exploring financing options. So what do? We pre-qualify you while you're searching. So when you come to the Riviera Maya to see the properties, you already have both things ready.
Right? That makes things more relaxed because you arrive knowing that, I mean, you have this safety net there and you can use it whenever you want.
Of course, you will always have the complete peace of mind. That comes from having a dedicated professional advisor who carefully guides you to see exactly what you like, according to your specific personal investment plan. But you also already have all of your necessary financing, fully secured and ready for your upcoming purchase.
Property? Yes, the financial part.
And you are really free. I mean, we qualify you and then you are free to choose the property, right? Yes. Whether it's ready for immediate delivery or if it's a pre-sale.
So you don't need to already have a specific property in order to qualify with HIR Casa, actually. I think it's essential to draw a clear distinction between the banks and you because, well, there's a very easy answer, which is the first one, but really someone could ask you, why should I choose HIR Casa and not a traditional bank in Mexico, for example? Right? What are the reasons?
Well, first of all, as I was saying, we serve different types of economies. We serve, as we were saying, clients who have income from properties, who are foreigners, or who are, who are people starting a business. We sometimes serve clients that traditional banks do not serve.
And
We are not in conflict with them. Something very important is that the GIR group, as I mentioned, which already has a lot of experience, also owns a mortgage franchise for banks. So it's not that we're in conflict. However, traditional banks normally won't lend to them, to the type of client we have in the Riviera. Or,
I mean, to begin with, banks won't give you the money if you're a...
foreigner here. I didn't want to say it like that.
Well, I'll say it, okay?
I did not want to express it in that particular way, but
I'm going to say it.
well,
But it is what it is. If you're a foreigner and you come here, I mean, and you don't have residency, the bank won't lend you the money.
well, no, that's the reality. And I've heard, things sometimes people, real estate agents and Canadians have told me, they say, well, my client doesn't need it. Because in their country, they get a HELOC, and with that, they buy property here. Well, the reality is that we have clients who use their HELOC for the down payment, and we finance the rest of the property.
That's great. Hey, I was really amazed the other day when you told me, I think this happened before you became a representative at HIR Casa. You were with some clients, help me remember, but you had tried to get them qualified with the bank, and the bank only wanted to qualify them for 3 million pesos, but then HIR Casa qualified them for 12 million pesos, right?
That's right, exactly.
That's pretty incredible.
I came to HIR Casa because when I was a real estate advisor, I used to give tours to clients. At the end of the tour, hey, so how does the financing work for this 12 million peso penthouse or for this 12 million peso house, right? Yes.
Yes, yes. And
that's how I got to know HIR Casa, and I saw the opportunity to support more real estate advisors and more people. This house you're talking about is very special to me because they're my friends and I still visit them at their home in Selvamar. It's a very beautiful house that was priced as a great opportunity. At that time, a bank approved us for 2.5 million and Gil Kaysen approved us for 12.5 million pesos.
no, well, no way.
So, and this is thanks to the fact that they have properties in Mexico that generate income. The lady suddenly had a detail on her credit bureau, but the husband came in as a joint obliger, and that allowed them to count her income. Well, it was something done by hand.
I love this, because banks forget about getting any kind of personalized service. I mean, look, this is very important because the people who invest here, most of them are second home owners. So these are people for whom this is their second home, and often they really don't know the market and need to be guided also during the mortgage loan qualification process, right?
And
many times with banks, it can feel very cold, very blunt, and I feel like you really give that care, that support. I mean, it's a service, like you said, almost tailor-made, right? Which is also what I do in my own work. So that's why I feel like it resonates with me,
it's something that caught my attention from the very beginning and that I really like about the company. It's literally a handcrafted service. For example, I have a client that you bring to me and I talk with him. And this story that the client tells, I write an email alongside the application, right? And this goes to a committee of people.
And
it's the committee that analyzes it. Okay, well, approved, right? So,
I mean, you also have a way of approving that's proactive. It's not like, oh, you don't have that, bye. No, let's see. Let me check what else you might qualify with. I mean, tell me everything you have coming in. Ready? I mean, I'm seeing it right now with our client too, right? Yes. I see it with her too, the support they provide. I like that. So, well, let's move on now to a real example. Let's look at a real breakdown example. Let's see if they can help us. They've already put it up. Look, there it is. I'm really blind, so, well, I'll do my best. But Nadia, you can probably guide us a little. Now, looking at the numbers so that those listening can understand how this looks in practice with numbers, with structure, if you could guide us a bit with that table.
Of course, well, here we have the example of a $250,000 property, which is a common figure. How does it work? The client makes a down payment. In this case, it would be $90,000. Well, let's remember that the loan is entirely in Mexican pesos. Here I used an exchange rate, but the loan is in pesos, right?
Reference.
It's $1,580,942.73, which is approximately equivalent to $90,267. And that's what the client puts down as a down payment.
Okay.
And what we finance is $2,779,166.67. And the client would be, well, HIR Casa would be what that would be in dollars is $159,722.22.
Dollars?
It's a short term. I mean, as I mentioned, it's only 115 monthly payments. That's 9 years and 7 months. The monthly payment would be approximately 43,942 pesos, which is about $2,525 at today's exchange rate. You can always pay in advance. You can always make a prepayment, like paying towards the principal, paying down the capital. In this case, your monthly payment would be 31,000 pesos, which is approximately $1,794.
Very good. Hey, a pretty strategic question, right? Because it can really help you to do a quick mental calculation. How can someone make a calculation to say, let's see, how much would I need to earn to get a loan? I mean, how would that calculation work?
Well, it's the sum of your monthly payment obligations. For example, how much do you pay for your mortgage each month? How much do you pay for your car each month? First, you take that amount and add it to your regular monthly payment, and then you multiply the resulting total by exactly 2.4.
All right, so with all of that calculated, you now have the specific total amount that you really ought to be earning, right?
Yes, that's what you have to prove, that you're receiving every month. Another advantage is that if you alone don't have that income, you can add your spouse, a friend, or someone else. Add a friend? Yes, of course. For example, here in this place, there are 4 of us. Here, the 4 of us can qualify for a loan together.
Oh, look, I didn't know that about friends. I thought it was only for direct family members.
No?
Wow, let's make a note of that. That's great. Thank you very much for that explanation. And well, I think now to give some bullet points for those who are listening to us exactly. If I call you tomorrow, I'm a client, right? And I say to you, Nadia, okay, I've understood everything from this episode now. Tomorrow I want to get started, right? What exactly are the steps to apply? That is, what is the first thing you evaluate and what documents do you need from me as a client who wants to get started in order to begin the pre-qualification?
Well, the initial filter is being open to a short term loan of only 10 years and being under 65 years old.
Okay,
There are times when people look absolutely wonderful at 70, but the official maximum age limit is 65 years old.
important fact. And
From there, it's a call, preferably a video call, to get to know the client better and understand their needs and create a plan tailored to them. I show them the numbers in the Excel table. All of this is based on how much they need, right? To pay off their property. And from there, information is uploaded to the platform and we get a response the next day, sometimes the same day, or 5 days at most. Then the opening fee is paid, which says opening fee there, 88,000 pesos, for example, for the case we just discussed.
yes.
And the client has up to 24 months to use their credit.
And in terms of documentation, it's a passport, I imagine. It was 6 bank statements, right?
Yes, correct. It's the passport, 6 bank statements, 3 months of payroll if they're an employee, the full credit report for the current month, and the taxes from the previous year.
Okay, does that apply to Mexicans and foreigners?
In the case of Mexicans, we don't ask for their credit report because we see it here in Mexico. And in the case of Mexicans as well, we don't ask for their income tax in the United States, for example, right?
Okay.
Unless the property, has a value greater than 10 million pesos. In that case, we do ask for their tax return.
Okay, perfect. And just before you mentioned that, well, the credit can actually cover even things like construction, renovations, and land. So I think it's quite interesting to go a little deeper into that because I remember one day you told me, well, for your client who has the lot, it's fine. They can build without a down payment. And I said to you, what do you mean without a down payment? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what is that product you have for building without a down payment on a piece of land? How does it work?
Yes, well, we've been talking about down payments, right? The 33%.
Sure.
If they're Mexican, 36 if they're a foreigner. What we do with this new product, which came out just a few months ago, is we use the value of your land at market value.
Through an appraisal, of course.
It's a market appraisal that's usually higher. Well, the appraisal comes out higher than what the property normally cost you, right? Taking advantage of the capital gain, what we do is we lend you up to double what the land is worth.
Of the current value. I mean, if you bought a piece of land 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
For what do you think? $50,000 because you bought very well?
Yes.
Let's say here in Tulum, right?
Uh-huh.
And today it's worth 100,000.
Correct.
You're going to lend me $200,000.
That's right.
Look,
Yes, I mean, you can take advantage of the capital gain on that land, and we lend you up to double the appraised value of the land. And this amount that HIR Casa is going to lend you will be paid in installments, that is, in payments during the progress of the work, which would be 30, 30, 25, and 15% during the progress of the house construction.
okay, let me see. Yes, because I had actually noted down there that I had 40, 30, 20.
40, 30, 20 applies when you make a down payment. 30, 30, 25, 15. When there is no down payment,
That's for the land. Perfect. Okay, no down payment.
no down payment. Besides, we have the other one, which is the combo, the land plus the construction. You put down 36% of the total of this land and construction combo. We finance both things, and then the payments would be 40, 30, 20, and 10% during the progress of the work.
Well, that sounds great to me. Honestly, if you have land and you're thinking of building in a more accessible and well-structured way, it seems like a very good product. So if you have land and want to build, you can start today with no down payment and with Nadia's guidance throughout the entire process. Well, today we talked about very clear ways to make a real estate project a reality here in Mexico, even if you don't live here. On one hand, well, you have a mortgage loan to buy a property.
Hmm.
You can qualify if you're looking for pre-sales and keep your qualification for 24 months or extend it to 36. And on the other hand, for those who have land and want to build with no down payment, well, there's another product you offer, which was called, excuse me,
It's actually called You Build.
You Build, where you can build with no down payment. And obviously, I always say this, and I really do mean it. The key is not just choosing quickly, but truly understanding what you need, taking the time to understand your options, and figuring out which path best fits what you're looking for, right? And if anything we talked about today connected with you, the next step I'd say isn't buying and isn't signing. It's getting informed and evaluating your case with an expert, in this case, with me, with Nadia. So, well, also thanks for staying until the end, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Real Real Estate. Nadia, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dali.
Talk soon.
Right.